Hey guys, it's Deepak Shukla here from Pearl Lemon. Today I want to take you through this tutorial on how to create compelling, humorous, and irreverent content for ultimately cold email campaigns. So this is a client that we're working with at the moment. Greek Lily is their name, and George is the gentleman that we're working with. He's the MD over at Greek Lily. So what we're being asked to do is to put together a cold email campaign that's going to target ultimately C-suite level employees as well as business owners at a range of companies that could benefit from Greek Lily's ultimately web development and full service digital marketing services, but beginning with web developments being the focus. So what I want to briefly talk to you about is the whole concept around how we build email campaigns and why we build email campaigns in this fashion. So number one, the first thing is that we build 7-step email campaigns. Why do we build 7-step email campaigns? It's because ultimately the value is in the follow-up, and the reality is that until we get a no thank you, we keep ultimately following up with the prospect. Now, if these emails were scheduled to be 3 days apart every time, that would get quite annoying. But what you'll tend to do is after, for example, email 3, you then move to 2-week increments so that it feels like a sufficient amount of time has passed between emails. And it can be anything from 14 days to 28 days, but 2 weeks is, I beg your pardon, 2 weeks is generally enough. And the problem, or where people get pissed off, is when you write content that is just annoying, it doesn't feel targeted and isn't compelling in any way. So that's just the first thing to consider. The second element of it with writing email copy is that there's a couple of things that to be mindful of. I'm going to go ahead and correct some of this content. As you'll see, adding emojis and GIFs as well as they can work, they tend to not work at scale, because the challenge is that you can often, or sometimes, and even if it's sometimes, get blocked by email servers who see GIFs or any kind of attachment as spam. So the fewer links and the more plain text content that you can produce, ultimately the better, because it just increases the deliverability overall. So less is more from an actual link, image, attachment perspective. And that's why also from, if you look at the direct response industry, that long form content that's written like it's an email to you or a personal handwritten letter to you actually performs better in terms of returns that you see when introducing something that's a new product. We're not talking about, for example, e-commerce newsletters where the rationale is different, or an audience who's already familiar with your brand or product. Both of those are slightly different things. We're talking here specifically in the context of someone who's engaging with your business and you for the first time. So if we think about those elements and rules, then it becomes important that you are able to kill all of these types of emojis and otherwise. So that's some of the considerations when it comes to the length of the sequence, 7 steps, and the words or advice on adding links or not adding links and otherwise. So generally speaking, you're going to have probably 2 links per email. When you have an unsubscribe option, that does qualify actually as a link, because it hyperlinks to your email automation provider or email send provider to let them know to take this person off the list. So you'll have that, and you'll potentially have a link to the company's website. So you may want to then even consider not having any links at all, with the singular goal of the email campaign to be to get a reply to that email. And that's probably what I would consider to be the focus of a campaign, removing all links and just having that one link, which is the unsubscribe link. Why? Because it increases the rate of deliverability, and deliverability ultimately is king. It's only messages that get seen that can get heard. And if they're not seen, then you will not be heard, irrespective of the quality of your content. So the fewer links, the better. I would always advocate in the end to ultimately have none. And if people do or are interested in obviously the content that you write, then they'll make their own minds as to either replying or giving you a quick Google to then figuring out outreach. So there's some of the elements to consider that are important to ultimately a multi-step email campaign. So that's some insights that are important when it comes to emails. The second element of it that I'd say, generally speaking, irrespective of the type of copy that you're producing, because we're going to go on to talk about ultimately humorous content as well as corporate content and some of the key nuances between each of them, is that you want to ensure that you don't produce content that's too long. I'd say anything more than 200 words is going to be too long. You need to remember that if you're contacting decision makers, then people have limited time. So you need to be concise and cogent in your messaging. That's something else that's really important to consider. The second thing that I'd also consider is looking at using one or two irreverent, unusual, or unique words to create a little bit of irreverence, a little bit of show stopping in your emails, because in the main, when it comes to content, a lot of people are going to be doing the same thing. And this is a formula that hasn't changed. And of course, there's a strong argument for why the formula shouldn't change, because it works. But to introducing a company, potentially introducing a case study, and then asking for a call. Now, all of those things are fantastic, but the way that you can wrap that ultimately formula up with particular packaging and presentation becomes really, really important. So I'd say that length within an email is really, really important. Knowing your audience is really, really important. And depending upon your audience's familiarity with your services, making a decision upon jargon, where to use it and where not to use it, and figuring out some of those things. So this is video one of a couple of steps when it comes to ultimately producing cold email content. So let's get into the next video.